video. This is going to be my January 2022 budget video. So I already posted a budget video, but it was not a planning video. It was just our budget plan and how we came up with that for 2022. This will actually be a plan with me writing in my planner, setting up our budget for January. So the first thing I have here is this Celebrate Each Day, this sticker book from Erin Condren. So I'm just showing this so you guys can see what I use to decorate my planner. So if you watch my planning videos, you know that I am using an Erin Condren graph notebook as my budget planner. And so I draw everything out and then I include stickers just to decorate it. So these are the stickers that I've been adding for January. So as you can see, the January sheet is just about empty. It's used up. This is what I've been using. And this is how I decorated my planner. So I'll go ahead and the first thing I'll do is I kind of walk through how I set it up for the year. As far as the budget and the amounts and where everything went, that you can catch on my other budget video that I posted for 2022. This will just go over how I laid out that plan in my planner. And then, like I said, I'll jump into January. So I'm gonna go ahead and flip through. So the first part of this planner was November, December, because that's when I started budgeting. And then, so this section will be where I start off for 2022. So I went ahead and labeled that, and that's the Soto budget. So the first thing that I have laid out here is goals. I went ahead and used the cover page to write down our goals and kind of what our plan is for 2022. So the first one is to create a budget that we are comfortable in and we can maintain it. So I think this is just a very important point for everyone to consider when putting together a budget, because there are a lot of great ideas out there on how to budget and how to spend your money, but you need to make sure that it's something that your family is comfortable with and that you guys can maintain it. Because I mentioned this in my other budget video and I'll kind of briefly say it here. There's certain things like the belief that you should not be going out to eat until you have all debt paid off and stuff like that, which I personally like that idea, but it's not really realistic for us. So I don't incorporate that into my budget. So that's why I kind of mentioned the fact that it's something you have to be comfortable with and you have to be able to maintain it. So the second goal we have is to create solid sinking funds so that known expenses don't throw off our budget. And so this has to do with creating our sinking funds, and we're creating them in a way that we're accounting for every expense that will come up at some point during the year. And our goal is to make sure that we're prepared for those things. So things like, car insurance or Christmas, when Christmas comes around. I mean, this is January. We have 12 months to prepare for Christmas so that come December, we're not wasting a bunch of money each paycheck or in the month of December trying to get gifts down. We can already have all that money put away and other things like that. So our goal is to make sure we establish that so those known expenses are accounted for and we don't have to worry about it when the month comes or when the time comes to spend those expenses, because we're already prepared for it. The next one is to pay off debt using Debt Snowball. And this is something that I also discussed in my budget video, and I'll kind of show it a little bit later in this planner. But that's our plan. We're going to pay off debt, and we're doing the whole Debt Snowball concept. And then the next one is to create a solid savings account for our family. And so that's just something I think that's something that will always be a goal for us, is to always make sure that we're saving money for our future or in case of emergencies or if anything happens, just to make sure that our family is secure. So I'll go ahead and flip through the next pages. So I've drawn everything out, but I haven't filled out any numbers yet, and I'll do that later. I don't think I'll really do this here. Most of this stuff will be starting zero as like sinking funds and stuff. So in this part, I have our savings account. And so we do have some money put aside, but I hadn't decided if I wanted to include this in our budget starting in 2022, because I don't want that to be something I'm leaning on. I want to start fresh, if that makes sense, to make sure that that's money that's managed. So the money we have put aside right now, I don't really want to consider that as savings. I want to consider that our emergency fund. And then this savings would be different, which would ultimately be the saving for 3 to 6 months of expenses and stuff like that. That's what I want this savings to really focus on. The little money we have set aside in our bank account, that's just really, in my opinion, for in case of emergencies or anything comes up, or a little buffer. So the savings account would end up really starting in zero. And I can go ahead and put that now because I think I've convinced myself that that's how I want to do it. And so that'll be starting at zero. So I have it here to break down for every month, what we add or subtract, and then our ending balance, so we can see a snapshot of that there. Same thing with sinking funds. So all my sinking funds, I'm going to be putting into a second checking account we have. So we have 2 checking accounts, and one of them is where our checks deposit and where we pay off our main bills. And then we have another checking account that we don't really use as much. It was just because one was open in his name and one was open in ours. We're both on both of them, but it's just the way the bank worked. So I think the second one is where we're going to start putting all our money for sinking funds. And when any of those expenses come out, then that's the card we're going to use. And so I want to keep track of what the balance is and what we should be seeing in that checking account on this page. So that's why this is here. And again, as of right now, this is going to be starting at zero. So we'll be able to put what we added or subtracted and our end balance at the end of the month. So the next thing, this is where it goes into debt repayment. So the way I'll start this off is on this side, I have it broken down by months, and then just gonna show our total debt at the start of the month, how much we added or subtracted from our debt that month. And ideally it should be only subtracting. We don't want to be adding any debt. So that's there in case, but I really don't plan to be adding anything to our debt. I'm plan to see these numbers just go down every month, but this will be how we can track that. And I mean, honestly, if for some reason we ended up paying more in interest or something, I mean, that could be put there, but I don't really plan on that. And then the next thing breaks us down into the debt snowball that I was talking about. This is our plan for our debts. We have all our debts written out, the amounts, the interest, the payments, and then here it just breaks it down on what we should pay on all our debts throughout the year so that we can pay them down. And I think by the end of the year, we should have almost all of them, well, half of them paid off, which would have been progress. And then this is not accounting for any additional funds that comes through. That's just based on the amount that I'm putting aside monthly for debt. And that I can kind of just jump on and show here. This is our breakdown of bills that I put, but the amount that I was talking about is this $2,144.56. That amount is going to be put to debt every month, and that's the money that we're going to be making payments with and snowballing to pay things off. And so that will be reflected here, and that's what all these totals are, and it'll fluctuate through the different months. The reason I included that other sheet is so that as I go through each month, I know what payment to make on every debt, so that I'm following the debt snowball, because that's not something that's going to be the same every month. Obviously, it's going to change as the snowball amount increases. Okay, so like I mentioned, this is our bills summary. And so I broke it down into different sections, and I talked about these in my budget video that I posted earlier. These kind of were in Excel, but I included them into my planner because, like I mentioned, I do Excel just to get the numbers, all calculated correctly and make sure there's no errors as far as those calculations go. But I prefer to see everything in my budget planner, and that's why I'm including it in here. And then I can see the way I broke it down. So the way I broke down our budget monthly, which obviously this might fluctuate, but this is just the base based off everything that we did to plan, and that you can find out in my other budget video, but this is how I broke it down. And so we have our monthly bills, which is everything we pay monthly. And some of these are variable and some of these are fixed, but honestly, for the purpose and where we are right now, I don't think it's that important to note whether they're variable or fixed, because I will just be tracking them all together, and then I have sections where I can annotate if there's any difference. But for the most part, I just put them all as monthly bills, even though some are variable and some are fixed. But these are everything that needs to be paid and have a due date, and I put all the names of them and the amounts right here. And then I went ahead and took the total. And then same thing for debts. For debts on this sheet though, I did not put the monthly payment. I put the balance instead because, as I mentioned, since we're doing the debt snowball, the payments will change monthly, so there was no point in tracking it. But I listed all the different debts that we have and then the balances so that I can see that. And then that's why here I noted that the monthly payment will be giving towards all of these alone. So this $2,144.56 is only in these categories, and that's what's going to be put, or these items, and that's what's going to put there to pay down our debt. And then here I have our spending categories, which are expenses that we constantly go through and we constantly have every month. It's not something that comes once or twice. It's just something that we always spend, which are things like gas, food, baby, which is diapers and formula, and sometimes clothes, pet fees. You know, we have pets, so we have to pay things for them, whether it's getting them groomed, buying food, or anything that they may need. That's their pet budget. We have entertainment, cheer expenses. So this one I put as a spending category because I know it's going to happen almost every month. It's very rare that it will not happen. Both my daughters are in cheer, and especially right now that it's the start, we're about to hit on competition season really hard this month. There will be a lot of expenses that we'll have to account for, which are basically entrance fees for us to get into the competitions, which are if we need to buy shirts or make shirts. We do that a lot. We'll make shirts to support them and we wear those. That'll be expenses that are accounted for in there. Or even if we're there, if we buy snacks or something at the venue, that'll be included in cheer expenses. So I added that one. And then goods. Goods is just a kind of general category for things that we may need in the house, whether it be household items like detergent or trash bags, or whether it be cleaning supplies, or whether we need new light bulbs or something. All that will come out of goods because, you know, we tend to spend money monthly and stuff like that. So I included that in there. And then the next thing I have here is our sinking funds. And so I listed them all here. I put the yearly amounts that we want to reach in each of these funds. And then I calculated that out to give us the monthly amount that we need to contribute to these sinking funds in order to reach these yearly goals. And I noted that on the annual 2022 view. So that way I know what I'm reaching for each month. But obviously this is not where I'm tracking it. This is just what my goal was for the year. And so next we can start getting into planning for January. So I went ahead and drew it out already, and you can see these are the stickers that I mentioned from this sticker book. So I used them to kind of decorate. I drew out the calendar, put my dates and everything. So I already marked my key for the items that I'm going to be putting into my planner. So the two things I'm going to be putting is my bills and any debts that need to be paid, and I'll be marking those in when they're due, so that I can keep tracking of them that way. And lay down everything that has a due date. And like I said, I put bills in blue and our debts in this pink. And so that way I can see them here. And then that way, as I'm paying things off and as the weeks are going by, I can make sure that everything's getting paid in time so we don't have any late fees. Everything's covered. And I just really like this visual, being able to see all of it here laid out in the planner. And then in a way that I can actually read it. Everything is not crammed on there. So there's my monthly layout with all my bills that have due dates. And so there's that. I am probably going to add, and I don't think I could do that right now because I don't even have the sticker, or maybe I do. Let me see. I have my life planner. So one thing with this month is that it is my little brother's birthday on the 18th. And that is something that we will be celebrating. So I'm going to note that on here because I don't typically note birthdays, but I feel like since this is a birthday that I know I will be spending money on to celebrate and get him gifts and stuff, I should probably note it. So that's on the 18th. So I'm going to put the happy birthday sticker there because that is a major event that obviously will have some kind of price tag attached to it. So I'm going to go ahead and move on. And so if you watched my planning videos for November and December, you know that one thing that I incorporated is called this bluff, which is my bottom line up front. So this is basically where I summarize our budget for the month. And so the first thing that I put on here, and I'm not going to include the actual amounts, but I'll write that it's going to be on here, is income. The first bullet I track in my bottom line up front is income. And I think this is very important because when you're working on your budget, you need to know what you're working with, how much money is going to come in. Because honestly and realistically, if there's no income, there's no budget. So that's my first bullet point in my bottom line up front, is what the income is for this month. The next thing that I put on here, which is very important, especially for where we are on our budget journey, is our total debt. And so I'll go ahead and write the amount that I'm looking at right now for total debt. So right now we're looking at $124,154.02. So this amount is the total debt that we're looking at right now that we ultimately want to pay off. I think it's a 4-year payoff plan that we have for it. What month is it? October of 2026. So yes, we're looking at a 4-year payoff plan for all our debt, which is the $124,000. But this sounds like a lot, but I mean, this is not all credit cards or something, guys. This is mostly, 2 vehicle payments. This is student loans. And then there's a few cards and stuff thrown into there. A big bulk of this is really, like I said, though, it's the student loans, which accounts for maybe about half of this. And because, I went to school, so I have student loans. So student loans count for about half of this. And then we have my husband's motorcycle and my van to pay off. So that's that big amount. And so it sounds scary, but knowing the things that it is, I don't feel that bad about it. Obviously I want to pay it off, though I don't want to owe that, but a 4-year payoff plan for all of that. And like I said, it's my student loans. Being able to pay off student loans in 4 years is honestly just very amazing, because student loans, usually I think they're laid out just for something like 20 years or something is how long they calculate you paying it off. And I had considered just doing that. I mean, the minimum payment I think is something like $300 once they kick in, because they were deferred due to COVID. There was something that they did that all student loans were deferred, but my monthly payment is about $300. And so I had considered just doing the bare minimum and just letting it drag out. But when I was doing the debt Snowball calculator and looking at the amount of interest that I would be paying, I think if I waited gave the minimum payment and waited the whole 20 years, I would have been paying something like $79,000 in interest, which is ridiculous to me. That's almost like a big chunk of my total debt in general. And so I was like, yeah, no, that's not going to happen. And being able to pay them off in 4 years and doing the debt Snowball and calculating my bills that way, I turned down my total interest payments for all my debt from $79,000 to like $32,000, which is like half of that, right? So that's just way better. So that's why we have the debt Snowball plan in place to pay off everything in 4 years, to cut down the amount of interest that we're paying on these debts. The next thing that I usually put on my bottom line up front is any monthly, and I keep saying that I'm going to change this name, but I haven't. But I still have it written down as monthly bills. And basically that's anything that is major that comes out once a month that I need to, remember that's going to come out. And so in previous months, this was like our Geico insurance, we pay it every 6 months. So if this is a month that was going to come out, I'd want to mark that down and know that, hey, this big chunk of money is about to come out of our funds. which I keep track of it because it's a big amount. But realistically, if we stick to our plan and we develop our sinking funds, when that happens, it won't be that big of a deal. It'll be still be something that I put in my bluff, but it wouldn't be something that I stress out about. But it's good to know whether there's anything that comes out monthly that you should consider for your budget. And then the last thing that I add on to my bluff is any big ticket items. And so these are anything that is happening this month that we would end up spending money on that doesn't normally happen. So this is anything that happens that's out of the normal, that's going to make us spend more money. And so I'll go ahead and I'll list the two things that I have for this month, because I do have big ticket items this month. And this is not to say that they're not accounted for in our budget, but they're just things that are, out of the ordinary that I want to think about during my budgeting to know that, hey, these are big expenses that are going to be coming out. So the first one is cheer competitions, and I'm just going to write it down as cheer competitions because I don't feel that I need to put the details in my budget. Just know that they're happening. And so, like I mentioned, we're about to jump into the competition season for my daughters, and we have, I think there's like 2 competitions and a showcase that'll be happening this month. And like I mentioned, those have fees associated with it. So those are big ticket items that will be occurring this month that we have to consider in our budget. And then the other one is birthdays. And like I mentioned, my little brother's birthdays is this month. And so that's something I have to think about, because if I end up buying him gifts or try and contribute to his birthday party or want to make him a cake or anything like that, that'll obviously have a ticket price associated to it. So that's something I include in big ticket items. So that's basically the bottom line up front. And I think this is very important, just so that when you're doing your budget monthly, you're thinking about the overall things and not just thinking of like, oh, I got to pay this on this date, this and this. Like, this is just like in your life, what are the big things that affect your budget? And these aren't just major things. I mean, how much money is coming in, how much you owe, anything that's major this month, or anything that's due this month, and anything that's major this month. This is bottom line up front. These are things I need to consider when doing my budget. So I have those listed there. And then the bottom portion, I have goals. And so I did have 2 goals that I wanted to write down for this month. So the first one is to keep all spending within budget and obtain feedback to improve. And so the reason for this goal is our main focus is to make sure that we're sticking to our budget plan and we're only spending things that we've accounted for or things that we've put money towards, not anything outside of that, because we don't want to throw off our budget. Obviously, we want to stick to it. And then the second portion talks about obtaining feedback to improve. And so what that is really talking about is making sure that if there's anything that isn't working in our budget, or things that need to change, or something that we put in there that really maybe isn't as big of a deal as I made it out to be when we were coming up with the budget, to make sure we're taking that feedback in so that we can improve our budget. Because the one thing to remember about budget is, so in the front of this planner for this year, I added in the breakdown of our budget for the year. And although I did that because that was where we were at that point, that doesn't mean that that's where we're gonna continue to be this whole time. I mean, that might change 100%. I mean, our situation might change, things we're spending on might change, anything could change. And so it's important to know that your budget can change as well, and should change as well, because we're not standing still, we're changing constantly, and our budget has to change with us. And so that's why I added this obtain feedback to improve. So my feedback is basically where I see differences in amounts that I plan to spend and amounts that I actually spent, so that I can see, okay, maybe I need to adjust this a little. Like if there's a category in here that I have put away like $200, and then I notice that we're spending $250 most months, and it's like, okay, I need to take that feedback and know that, okay, maybe this category needs to be changed because we're spending more than I projected originally. Sorry about that. I bought an ice machine, and I really, really love it, but it goes off every now and then to start making ice. So it makes noise and I'm nearby it, so you can hear it sometimes. Sorry about that, but it's real quick on and off, as you can tell, but sorry. But yes, so that was our first goal, to keep our spending within our budget and to obtain feedback. And then the last goal is to work to establish our sinking funds to account for upcoming expenses. And I've kind of talked a lot about sinking funds already, so I don't think that's something that I need to go too much into detail about, but it's just making sure that we have the funds available for any of our sinking fund categories that will come up. We're not worried about that money. We have our sinking funds established, and that's one thing we want to make sure we have. Next thing that I will do in this video is break down our week 1. So I did decide to do our budget broken down by paycheck, and I did this for a specific reason. The reason I did this is because I feel like when I do everything monthly, and so even as far as like categories, like I know the amounts that are in there, but not doing it by each paycheck is like I'm having trouble making sure that we spread out that budgeted amount for like the whole month. So I have in the front, you know, let me see if I can turn to it real fast. I have in the front, you know, I broke down our bills for the month, and this would be the monthly breakdown that I'm working off of. But being able to break it down by paycheck, it just makes it easier to control the amount of spending that we have in each category, thinking about it in a weekly basis. And I say weekly basis because I get paid weekly. And so if I know like we got paid and this is how much I threw into this category, this is what we have to spend for the week. And I feel like doing it that way, breaking down by paycheck, which essentially ends up being weekly, it'll give us more control of the amount we're spending per week and making sure that we're spending, you know, evenly throughout the month. Not like, let's say if I don't break down our food category, which ends up being groceries and stuff, weekly or by paycheck, whichever way you want me to say it. I mean, they're pretty synonymous in my case. But if I just said food for the month, just a random example, it is like $300. But I'm like, okay, this month I have $300, and I go to the store and then I spend like $250. So it's like, great, that's the beginning of the week. I mean, the beginning of the month, and I have $300 budget and I spent $250, so $50 for the rest of the month. Like, that's just a little harder to manage. As opposed to if I do it weekly or by paycheck, the food amount will be different. So let's say instead of $300, it's $75. And these are mock numbers. It's just to give an example. Then I know, okay, this week I have $75 to spend. So when I'm in the grocery store, I'm thinking, okay, I only have $75 to spend. And that way to me just makes it a little easier to stick to the budget and pay attention to the budget and what's being spent by looking at a weekly by paycheck basis, as opposed to the monthly view, which I essentially do have the monthly view. That's what I started with for the year, but I'm breaking this down by paychecks or by week, so that way I'm thinking about it weekly. And so up here up top, what I went ahead and did is I wrote the income sources. So I wrote the income, I'll put the projected amounts, and then I'll end up putting the actual amounts that they were, and I'll put the difference in those totals here, so I can see what we got paid this week. And so this section will obviously change because I get paid weekly, but my husband gets paid bi-weekly. And then extras ends up being, we use our rewards card to pay for everything, and then we pay off our rewards card. But that's because it gives us dollar amounts. So those dollar amounts that we cash out, like last month, the end of last month, I think I cashed out $62 that we got in essentially free money just for using the rewards card. That would be something that's added on here, $62 added into this weekly budget. So I have that section up here. And then I went ahead and wrote down our actual budget for this paycheck. So our budget, these are the things listed that we will be paying. So it'll be our mortgage, our pool service, our Hulu, Disney subscription, Netflix subscription, iTunes, gym membership, Spectrum, Vivint, private lessons for my daughters, Weight Watchers, Google, Book of the Month, and then our spending categories, which are gas, food, and baby. Those are all items that will be pulled out of this paycheck so that I can account for it there. And so I'm just gonna go ahead and start writing amounts for that. Yeah, so I went ahead and wrote down all of the planned expenses that I have for this month. When I total that up, that should be what we get paid this week. And then if there's any difference, I'll account for it. So if we get paid more than I projected, I have room for extra categories here, which would end up either being savings, or if I throw it to something else and then I'll add that amount there. Well, it would actually be here because nothing was planned for it. So if this changes and I add another category, I can always add it there and add those expenses and the differences so that I can see how I do by paycheck. So yeah, that's the main part of the budget right now, is to break down our weekly for week 1. And this will be for week 1, which week 1 falls to January 7th, because that's the first Friday of the month, is in which when I'll get paid, because this past Friday was still December, so that fell into December's budget. So that the first Friday of January is January 7th. And so that's what this accounts for. What else do I have in here? So I broke down the other weeks, and I actually accidentally had put amounts when I was drawing this out here. So that'll be, maybe I should just write all the amounts down for the beginning, or maybe not. I don't think I want to do that. I'll write it down when I do my check-ins. So I did week 2, the items that are paid there. Week 3, the items that are paid there. And week 4, the items that are paid there. So that's how I broke it down each paycheck. So there's only four Fridays this month, which will be 4 weeks, which are 4 pay periods, which is how I have my bills broken down. And the next thing I have that I'm not going to do right now, but I will do it when I check in on Thursday the 6th, because I want to do my check-ins on Thursdays right before the pay happens on Friday, is I'll go through and I'll keep track of my spending categories. So if you remember, when I broke down our monthly budget, I had the spending categories, which are things that we spend on constantly, which is gas, food, baby, pets, entertainment, share expenses, and goods. Weekly, I'm going to check in to see what our starting balance is, anything we added, anything we subtracted, and our ending balance for the week. That way we know how we're doing and what we have to start with for the next week. And so I'll do these check-ins on Thursday. So when I do my check-in video on Thursday, it'll essentially just be this portion checking in on how we're doing with spending and anything that has come up, and then making sure that we've paid our monthly bills and any variable or any differences between incomes that we've had, how we're accounting for and working through that. That'll be in my check-in videos that happen on Thursdays. This is for the fourth week. It all didn't fit in one. This is where I will be tracking my sinking funds for the month. So here I went ahead and I wrote down all the categories that we have. Our starting income or starting amounts for all our sinking funds is 0. I can go ahead and put that on there, or I mean, it's not a big deal. Really, next month will be when this category is different, is because this category or this section next month will end up being the end section of this month. So when I do that next month, I'll add in our updated sinking fund balances to see what I was able to put away in sinking funds, anything that's spent out of sinking funds, and just kind of get a picture of where we are, and then a summary of what we're starting with in that account. So right now I'm starting an account in 0, which I think I actually have some money in there, but it's nothing major and nothing we're accounting for. But I'll look at that later and see if I leave it in there or throw it into a category. But essentially that checking account's starting out at 0. And then I have all my categories that I'll add funds to for sure, because that's our goal. And then that I might take out from. So one for sure that I know is going to happen is gifts. Gifts, I'll end up having an amount here that I take out for my brother's birthday. And then also my daughters are invited to a birthday party for one of the girls in their cheer team. So that'll be a gift associated also. So that'll be an amount that we take out that would be marked in here. So this though will take place at the end of the month when I have a full picture of how much I added in total and how much I subtracted in total for sinking funds. And how I'll keep track of that will be with my transaction log. And so right here, I have the transaction log for the month, and this really has room to grow, and I can add it into another page. Like I said, that's a good thing about having the notebook, that I can extend what I need for the month as much as I need to because I don't pre-prep for the next month until the next month is going to happen. But this is where I can keep my transaction log. So for example, when I buy a gift for their friend, it would be the place I buy the gift. So I'll put the name there, the amount I spend, I'll list it here and what category it falls into. And categories will essentially be what sinking fund this falls out of. And then when I check in for my sinking funds, I'll add any of multiple transactions of one category together. And then I'll include that in here to see where my sinking funds are at. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. That's how I have our budget laid out and how I'm working on the monthly budget. I feel really confident with it. I'm really proud of how I have the planner laid out because I feel like it covers and has everything that I will need. And it's just a really good picture of us to see the multiple items that we're keeping track of and watching and seeing our progress on that. So I'm really happy with the budget planner this month. But of course, if there's anything that needs to change for next month, I have the space to do that and I'll note it and do it as we go through the month. But honestly, I feel really confident and think I have everything I need. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe. I'm working on getting better this month, and I wrote down this year, and wrote down a whole schedule to make sure that I am providing the video and content to you guys with enough time. The winter break was really what I needed to just kind of refresh and get started. We had a crazy busy year with cheer and stuff, and we just had to get back into the schedule. But that break really helps to relax and get back on schedule. So I'm ready to hit the ground running this year. And so hit subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the awesome content or ideas that I have planned for my channel. And also tune into or switch over onto Instagram and join me at Plan with Soto. There you can usually see sneak peeks or images of my planner, what I'm working on, anything I'm doing. So I do my plan with me's, and that's how I set up during the beginning of the week. But obviously there's more that goes into my planner during the week. So I add those pictures on there too. So you can kind of see more of what my planner looks like once it's down and dirty in the weeds, working through it and using it. I have those pictures on there as well as as well as other things I'm interested in. So whether it be Starbucks or reading or something, all that other stuff is also included in my Instagram. So go ahead and switch over and take a look at that. Other than that, I really enjoyed going through my budget with you guys. I can't wait till my check-in. I just think it's going to be great. So I'm ready to share that with you guys. And I'm just ready for this 2022 new year. I just know it's going to be amazing. Other than that, until next time, bye guys.